A little beggar girl approaches a millionaire with a rose in her hand. "Sir, buy this rose. I need money for my mother's medicine." Moved, he decides to help, but when he asks the girl's mother's name, his world instantly crumbles completely. That name, so unique and special, belongs to the woman he deeply loved in the past. What he discovers when following the child to her home is so shocking and unbelievable that it completely changes everyone's destiny. The rain fell relentlessly over New York City that March afternoon, turning the streets of the Ironwood district in Queens into small, muddy streams. Richard Blackwood walked under his Italian umbrella, his imported leather shoes splashing water with every cautious step. His shrewd eyes scanned the dilapidated facades, mentally calculating how much it would cost to demolish each of those old buildings to make way for his newest luxury development. At 42, Richard had achieved everything he'd ever dreamed of: a considerable fortune, recognition in the real estate market, and the respect, or perhaps the fear, of his competitors. His new project would be his masterpiece, a residential complex that would completely transform this forgotten part of the city. The residents would have to be relocated, of course, but that was just a bureaucratic detail for someone with his resources and connections. As he observed a particularly run-down building, his thoughts were interrupted by a child's voice that cut through the noise of the rain. "Mister, buy this rose. I need money for my mum's medicine." Richard looked down to find a little girl, about 5 years old. She was partially sheltered from the rain by a broken awning, holding a wilted red rose in her delicate little fingers. Her large brown eyes shone with a silent plea that for some inexplicable reason pierced the emotional armor he had built over the years. Something in that gaze made him stop. Perhaps it was the raw sincerity in the child's face, or maybe it was simply the contrast between his own fortune and the child's evident need. Without a second thought, Richard pulled his wallet from the inner pocket of his Armani suit. "How much for the rose, little one?" he asked, his usually authoritative voice softening involuntarily. $5, mister," the girl replied, her voice trembling slightly from the cold rain. Richard pulled out a $100 bill. "Keep the change," he said, handing her the money as he took the rose. "Is your mother very sick?" The girl nodded, clutching the bill to her chest as if it were a precious treasure. "She has a high fever. She couldn't even get out of bed today." Something about the situation struck a sensitive chord in Richard, perhaps a remnant of humanity that still survived in his heart, hardened by years of relentless ambition. "What's your mother's name, little one?" The girl's answer hit him like a bolt of lightning. "My mom's name is Zara." The world seemed to freeze around Richard. Zara, a name he had desperately tried to forget for the past 8 years. A name that carried the weight of his greatest renunciation, his most painful choice, his first and only true love. "Zara," he stammered, his usual composure completely shattered. What's her last name?" "Zara Mendez," the girl replied, looking at him with innocent curiosity, unaware of the whirlwind of emotions her words had unleashed. Richard felt his legs grow weak. It was her. It couldn't be a coincidence. Zara Mendez, the woman he had abandoned in the name of his ambition, the only person who had ever seen through his facade of a ruthless businessman. "Could you take me to her?" he asked, struggling to keep his voice steady. "Maybe I can help." The girl hesitated for a moment, then smiled, revealing a dimple on her left cheek, exactly like Zara's. "I can, mister. It's right nearby." As he followed the small figure through the narrow alleyways of the district, Richard made a quick mental calculation. 8 years since he'd left Zara, a girl of about 5. His heart began to pound, a disturbing suspicion forming in his mind. The little girl stopped in front of an old 3-story building, ironically one of those slated for demolition in his plans. "It's here, mister. 3rd floor. Apartment 32. Climbing the dimly lit stairs, Richard felt each step as if he were walking to his own judgment. The third-floor hallway was narrow and poorly maintained, with wallpaper peeling from the walls. The girl stopped before a door with the number 32 partially faded and turned the knob. The apartment was small and modest, but clean and organized, exactly how Zara had always kept her old place. In the bedroom, lying on a simple bed, was Zara. Her dark hair was spread over the pillow, her tan skin glistening with sweat, her lips murmuring unintelligible words in her fever. Richard felt his heart break. The strong, vibrant woman he had known was there, fragile and ill, while he built empires of concrete and glass. And beside her, holding her hand with dedication, was a little girl who could very well be his daughter. In that moment, under the dim light of a cheap lamp, Richard Blackwood, the ruthless real estate tycoon, felt his world crumble like a house of cards. The silence in the room was broken only by Zara's irregular breathing and the ticking of an old clock on the wall. Richard remained paralyzed for a few moments, his mind a maelstrom of memories and possibilities. The girl, he still didn't know her name, tugged his sleeve gently. "Mister, are you going to help my mummy?" The innocent question roused Richard from his trance. Years of making quick decisions in crisis situations took over. He pulled his cell phone from his pocket and dialed his private physician. "Dr. Miller, I need you now. I have an emergency." He gave the address and hung up, turning to the girl. "What's your name, little one?" "Sophia," she replied, still holding her mother's hand. "Mommy says it means wisdom." Sophia. The name hit Richard like a new wave of recognition. How many times had Zara mentioned that if she ever had a daughter, she would name her Sophia? It was her favorite name, she always said, because it represented everything she valued most, knowledge and understanding. He approached the bed cautiously, as if fearing Zara might awaken at any moment and expel him. Her face was thinner than he remembered, but still held that unique beauty that had captured him years ago. He touched her forehead. She was burning, with fever. "Sophia, how long has your mother been like this?" "It started last night," the girl answered, her small voice laden with worry. "She tried to go to work this morning, but she couldn't get up. She said she just needed to rest a bit." But a sound of hurried footsteps in the hallway interrupted her. Dr. Miller, a grey-haired man with a kind expression, entered the room accompanied by two paramedics carrying medical equipment. "Where's the patient, Richard?" he asked, already putting on his gloves. "Here," Richard indicated Zara. "She has a high fever and is semi-conscious." The doctor immediately began his examination, while the paramedics prepared a first aid kit. Richard led Sophia into the living room, trying to keep her away from the commotion. "Sophia, we need to take your mom to the hospital," he explained, crouching down to her eye level. "She'll get the best possible treatment, I promise. But you'll need to be very brave, okay?" The girl nodded, her large eyes filling with tears. "Can I go too?" "Of course you can," Richard replied, surprised by the gentleness in his own voice. "I won't separate you from your mother." While they waited, Richard observed the apartment more closely. The walls had a few framed photos, all of Zara and Sophia at different times. In none of them was there any male figure. His heart ached. Dr. Miller came out of the bedroom, his expression serious. "She needs to be hospitalized immediately. She has a severe infection, possibly bacterial. Her fever is very high, and there are signs of systemic compromise. Prepare everything at Presbyterian General Hospital," Richard ordered. "I want the best suite and the best team." The paramedics brought a stretcher, carefully transferring Zara. Sophia clung to Richard's hand, her small fingers trembling. Together, they followed the stretcher to the ambulance, parked on the street. During the ride to the hospital, Richard couldn't take his eyes off Sophia's face. Every expression, every gesture seemed an echo of Zara, but there was something more. Subtle details he recognized from his own reflection in the mirror, the shape of her eyes, the line of her jaw. At the hospital, while Zara was taken for tests, Richard sat in the waiting room with Sophia on his lap. The girl had clung to him like an anchor in the storm, and he was surprised by the protective instinct growing in his chest. "Sophia," he began hesitantly, Do you know anything about your father?" The girl shook her head. "Mommy never talks about him. When I ask, she gets sad, so I stopped asking." Richard felt a lump in his throat. "And how old are you exactly?" "I'm turning 6 in September," Sophia replied, distractedly playing with his tie. September, the month he had left Zara almost 6 years ago. The pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place in a way that left him simultaneously terrified and awestruck. A nurse approached, interrupting his thoughts. "Mr. Blackwood, the patient is settled in room 501. She's still unconscious but stable. The doctor would like to speak with you about her treatment." Richard stood up, settling Sophia in his arms. The girl had fallen asleep, exhausted by the day's events. Looking at her serene little face, he made a decision that would forever change the course of his life. No matter what he discovered, he would not abandon this family again. In the luxurious hospital suite, Richard watched Zara sleep, connected to several monitors that beeped softly. Sophia slept on a nearby sofa bed, curled up in a soft blanket a kind nurse had provided. It was 2 in the morning, and the hospital corridors were silent. His cell phone vibrated for the 10th time, another message from Carl, his partner, demanding his presence at an important meeting with investors. Richard turned off the phone without replying. For the first time in his professional life, business was not his priority. Dr. Miller entered the room quietly, carrying a folder with test results. "Richard, we need to talk. Let's go to my office?" In the hallway, before they left, Richard asked a nurse to keep an eye on Sophia. In the office, the doctor opened the test results on his computer. "The situation is more complex than we initially thought," the doctor began, his face grave. "The infection is under control, but the tests revealed an underlying autoimmune condition that needs to be addressed. It's something that has likely been developing for months, perhaps years." "What's the treatment?" Richard asked, his mind already calculating costs and possibilities. "There's a very promising experimental protocol, but..." Dr. Miller hesitated. "It's extremely expensive and only available at a few medical centers abroad." "Money is no object," Richard replied automatically. "How much?" "About $2 million, not including travel and accommodation expenses." The doctor adjusted his glasses. "Richard, I need to ask, what is your relationship with the patient? As your personal physician for years, I've never heard you mention this woman." Richard ran his hands over his face, feeling the weight of exhaustion and the recent revelations. "It's complicated, Dr. Miller. She was very important to me in the past, and that little girl, I suspect she's my daughter." The doctor nodded understandingly. "I see. In that case, I suggest we run some additional tests, a DNA test perhaps." "Yes, but with absolute discretion," Richard replied. "I don't want any of this leaking to the press. My personal life is complicated enough without the tabloids speculating about a possible secret heiress." Back in the room, Richard found Sophia, awake, looking anxiously at her mother. He sat beside her on the sofa. "Uncle Richard," she whispered, "is Mommy going to be okay?" "Yes, she is, little one," he replied, surprised at how naturally the affection flowed in his voice. "The doctors are taking very good care of her." "You're rich, aren't you?" Sophia asked suddenly. "I saw you on TV once. You build big buildings." Richard swallowed hard. "Yes, I'm a builder." Then why does Mommy always look sad when she walks past your buildings? The innocent question hit Richard like a punch to the gut. Before he could answer, a movement on the bed caught his attention. Zara was waking up, her eyes opening slowly. "Sophia," she called, her voice hoarse. "Mommy!" The girl ran to the bed, hugging Zara carefully. Richard stood up, his heart pounding. Zara finally noticed his presence, her eyes widening in recognition. "And fear." "Richard," she whispered, instinctively pulling Sophia closer. "What? How?" "Sophia found me on the street," he explained gently. "You were very sick. I had to bring you to the hospital." Zara closed her eyes for a moment, as if absorbing the information. When she reopened them, there was a familiar determination in her gaze. "Sophia, honey, could you ask the nurse for a glass of water, please?" As soon as the girl left the room, Zara turned to Richard, her voice trembling with restrained emotion. "You can't do this. You can't just reappear in our lives after all this time." "Zara, please," he began. "We need to talk. Sophia, she—" "No," Zara cut him off firmly. "I won't let you hurt her like you hurt me. As soon as I get better, we're leaving. I'll pay back every penny for this hospital, even if it takes years." "You're sick," Richard argued. "You need specialized treatment. And Sophia, she deserves to know—" "Know what?" Zara interrupted, tears glistening in her eyes. "That her father chose a concrete empire over a family? That he doesn't even know she exists because he was too busy closing deals to take my calls?" The silence that followed was deafening. Sophia returned with the glass of water, oblivious to the palpable tension in the air. Richard watched as she helped her mother drink, his heart torn between past guilt and a desperate desire to be part of their future. The next morning brought new challenges. Richard had spent the night in an armchair in the corner of the room, watching mother and daughter sleep. His cell phone, now back on, wouldn't stop vibrating with urgent messages from his team. The latest was from Carl, his partner. "Emergency board meeting in 1 hour. Your presence is essential." Reluctantly, Richard realized he couldn't postpone his professional responsibilities any longer. He approached the bed where Zara was awake, idly flipping through a magazine. "I need to go to the office," he said softly. "But I'll be back soon. And I'll leave my number with the nurse, in case you need anything." Zara just nodded curtly, without looking up from the magazine. Sophia, who was playing with a tablet Richard had provided, ran to him. "Are you really coming back, Uncle Richard?" she asked, her big eyes full of worry. He knelt to her level. "I promise I will, Sophia, and I'll bring you a surprise." In the elevator, Richard was already on the phone with his assistant, Lauren. "I need you to do some discreet research. I want to know everything about Zara Mendez for the past 6 years. Where she lived, where she worked, everything. And more importantly, I need you to find out why I never received her calls back then." Arriving at his office, Richard found the place in an uproar. Carl was waiting for him at the door of the conference room, his face red with irritation. "Where the hell have you been?" he hissed. "The Chinese. Investors are furious. The Ironwood District project is behind schedule, and you just disappear for 24 hours. Richard walked into the conference room, where 10 executives awaited him with tense expressions. Mechanically, he began his presentation on the real estate project, but his mind was miles away in a hospital room. "As you can see," he continued, pointing to a projection of the district, "the first phase of demolition will begin in—" His voice faltered. On the screen, highlighted in red, was the building where Zara and Sophia lived. Suddenly, reality hit him. His project would not only destroy their home, but also affect dozens of other families. "Richard," Carl called out, concerned by his hesitation, "is everything all right?" We need to revise the project," Richard said, surprising everyone. "I want a new proposal that includes the revitalization of existing structures, not just demolition." A murmur of protests filled the room. Carl pulled him aside. "Have you lost your mind? We've already invested millions in this project. The contracts are signed." "It's my company," Richard replied firmly, "and I say we're going to do things differently this time." Leaving the tumultuous meeting, Richard found Lauren waiting in his office with a folder of documents. "Sir, I found the information you requested," she said, handing him the papers. "Zara Mendez left the country in 2019, moving to Portugal. She worked as a language teacher in Lisbon until 6 months ago, when she returned to the US. Richard eagerly flipped through the documents. There were photos of Zara in Lisbon, always accompanied by Sophia at different ages. In all of them, the smile he had loved so much was present, though her eyes carried a shadow of sadness. "About the calls," Lauren continued, hesitant, "I discovered something disturbing. Your former assistant, Clara, maintained an unofficial policy of filtering personal calls when you were closing important deals. There are records of at least 3 contact attempts from Zara in 2019. Richard felt his stomach churn. Clara had been fired years ago for other irregularities, but this was unforgivable. "One more thing," Lauren added, handing him a final document. "I found Sophia's birth certificate. The date coincides with the time you and Zara—" Richard didn't need to finish reading. Sophia's birth date, combined with a normal gestation period, pointed directly to the last weeks of his relationship with Zara. His phone rang. It was the hospital. His heart froze as he answered. "Mr. Blackwood?" It was the head nurse. "Ms. Mendez is having an adverse reaction to the medication. Dr. Miller asked you to come immediately." Richard was already running for the elevator before he even hung up. On the way, a certainty grew in his heart. No corporate empire was worth the price of losing his family again. Richard burst into the hospital like a storm, ignoring greetings and protests from the staff as he rushed to Zara's room. He found Dr. Miller in the hallway, his expression worried. "What happened?" he asked, breathless. "The medication caused a severe allergic reaction," the doctor explained. "We've managed to stabilize her, but this confirms what I feared. Her case is more complex than it seemed. We need that specialized treatment as soon as possible." Inside the room, Zara was conscious but visibly weakened. Sophia was sitting on the bed beside her, holding her hand tightly. When she saw Richard, the girl ran to him. "Uncle Richard, Mommy got all red and couldn't breathe right. It was so scary." He picked her up automatically, surprised at how natural the gesture already felt. "It's okay now, little one. The doctors have taken care of your mom." Zara watched the interaction with a mix of emotions on her pale face. Richard noticed unshed tears in her eyes. "Sophia," he called gently, "how about you go with the nurse to the cafeteria? You haven't had lunch yet, and I need to talk to your mom." After the girl left, a heavy silence fell over the room. Zara was the first to break it. "Why are you doing this, Richard?" Her voice was weak but laden with emotion. "Is it guilt? Pity? Or just another one of your power games?" Richard pulled a chair close to the bed, choosing his words carefully. "You tried to tell me about her, didn't you? When you found out you were pregnant." Zara closed her eyes, a tear finally escaping. "3 times. Your assistant always said you were in meetings too important to be bothered with personal matters. The 3rd time I got the message." "I didn't know," he said, his voice breaking. "I swear on everything holy, Zara, I didn't know. Clara never passed on your calls. She was fired years later for other irregularities, but I only found out about this today." "And would it have made a difference?" Zara asked bitterly. "You had already chosen your path, Richard. I remember your exact words. I can't get distracted by relationships right now. I need to focus on my career." Richard felt each word like a stab. "I was a fool, an ambitious, blind fool who—" A knock on the door interrupted him. It was Lauren, his assistant, looking nervous. Excuse the intrusion, sir, but it's urgent. The board has called an extraordinary meeting for tonight. They're questioning your decision about the Ironwood District project. Carl is leading a motion to remove you from the presidency. Richard cursed under his breath. Zara watched him with curiosity. What Ironwood District project? He hesitated, but knew he had to be honest. A luxury residential complex. The original plan involved demolishing several old buildings, including where you live. Zara let out a humorless laugh. Of course, the universe has an interesting sense of irony, doesn't it? You reappear in our lives just to evict us. No, Richard protested. I've already ordered a complete review of the project. No one is going to be evicted, I promise. And that's causing you problems, Zara concluded, observing Lauren's tense expression. Nothing I can't handle, he replied, trying to sound more confident than he felt. Lauren cleared her throat discreetly. Sir, there's one more thing. The press. Someone leaked about your presence at the hospital. There are reporters in the lobby speculating about a mysterious woman and a possible secret daughter. Richard saw the panic in Zara's eyes. I don't want Sophia exposed to this, she said firmly. She's been through enough. I won't let anyone bother you, Richard assured her. Lauren, arrange for private security at the room door immediately and prepare the hospital helipad. If we need to leave, it'll be that way. After Lauren left, Richard turned back to Zara. I know I don't deserve it, but I need you to trust me right now. I'll protect you both, no matter the cost. Zara studied him for a long time, as if trying to read his soul. You've really changed, haven't you? I'm trying, he answered honestly. Meeting Sophia, seeing you again. I realized I built an empire at the expense of everything that truly mattered. I don't want to live like that anymore. A child's sob in the hallway interrupted the moment. It was Sophia, crying in the nurse's arms. What happened? Richard asked, alarmed. Some reporters saw her in the cafeteria, the nurse explained, embarrassed. They started taking pictures and asking questions. She got scared. Richard felt a wave of fury rise in his chest. He had built his empire, yes, but now he would use all that power to protect his family, the family he had almost lost through his own stupidity. The ensuing chaos turned the hospital into an improvised fortress. Richard mobilized his personal security team to ensure Zara and Sophia's privacy while trying to manage the growing crisis in his company via phone. Sophia, still shaken by the incident with the reporters, refused to leave the room. Sitting in a corner, hugging a teddy bear Richard had sent for from his home, she watched the adults with frightened eyes. We need to talk, Zara said, her voice stronger after the new treatment. Sophia, honey, can you go with Nurse Julia to the playroom? It's just next door, and I promise no one will bother you. After the girl left, escorted by the nurse and 2 security guards, Zara adjusted herself in bed. I saw the news on my phone, she began. Your empire is crumbling because of us. Richard, who was furiously typing on his laptop, looked up. Not because of you, because of my choices, past and present. Your company's stock dropped 15% today, Zara continued. Investors are panicking because the ruthless Richard Blackwood suddenly decided to cancel his most ambitious project to protect a decaying housing complex. I can handle it. Can you? She questioned. I read about the board meeting. Your partner, Carl, is convincing shareholders you've lost your mind. His words were erratic behavior and emotionally compromised decisions. Richard slammed his laptop shut harder than necessary. How do you know all this? I'm a language teacher, Richard, not an alien. I know how to use Google. She sighed. And I know when I'm being used as a weapon against someone. What are you talking about? Carl, she replied. He called me an hour ago, offering a generous settlement for Sophia and me to disappear from your life. Said it would be better for everyone, especially your company. Richard paled. He did what? Calm down, Zara urged, seeing the fury grow in his eyes. I didn't accept, obviously, but it made me realize we need to clear some things up. She paused, gathering courage. Yes, Sophia is your daughter. The DNA test you discreetly requested will only confirm what we already know. But I don't want your money, Richard. I don't want to be the woman who destroyed your empire, nor do I want Sophia to carry that burden. You're not understanding, Richard interrupted, running his hands through his hair in frustration. I don't care about the empire for the first time in my life. I'm seeing things clearly. He approached the bed, sitting on the edge. I've spent the last 15 years building skyscrapers, convinced that height equaled success. But you know what I discovered yesterday? Our daughter's smile is worth more than all my buildings combined. Zara felt her defenses begin to crumble. Richard, let me finish, he asked. When you tried to tell me about the pregnancy, I was closing the deal that made me a millionaire. I traded the possibility of being a father for my first skyscraper. Do you know how many nights I spent alone on the top floor of that building, feeling like something was missing? Silent tears streamed down Zara's face. I can't let you destroy yourself for us. Sophia has already suffered enough from absences. If you come into her life now and then regret it, never, Richard interrupted firmly. I will never regret or abandon you. If I have to, I'll rebuild my life from scratch. I've already wasted too much time chasing the wrong kind of wealth. A small sound at the door interrupted them. It was Sophia, who had slipped away from the nurse's watch. Her eyes were wide, and Richard realized with a pang in his heart that she had overheard part of the conversation. Are you... Sophia hesitated, her small voice trembling. Are you my daddy? The silence that followed was deafening. Richard looked at Zara, who nodded slightly, tears still streaming down her face. Yes, Sophia, he replied, his voice hoarse with emotion. I am your daddy, and I'm so sorry for not being there before, but if you'll give me a chance... He couldn't finish the sentence. Sophia had run to him, throwing herself into his arms. With all the strength of her 5 small years, Richard hugged her back, feeling his heart overflow with a love he had never imagined he could feel. Over Sophia's head, his eyes met Zara's. There was fear there, and doubt, but also something more. A small flame of hope that he silently vowed never to let extinguish again. The news hit like a tsunami the next morning. Carl had called an unauthorized press conference and in front of dozens of reporters announced he was filing a legal motion to remove Richard Blackwood from the presidency of Blackwood Holdings, citing irrational behavior and decisions detrimental to shareholders. Richard watched the live stream on his tablet, sitting in the hospital room with Sophia asleep in his lap. The girl had refused to leave his side since the revelation of the night before, as if fearing he might disappear if she lost sight of him. Our CEO, who has always been known for his business acumen, Carl continued on screen, suddenly cancelled a $500 million project without consulting the board. Worse, we discovered the reason is a, let's say, delicate personal situation involving an old girlfriend and an alleged daughter. Zara, who was also watching, angrily turned off the tablet. He had no right to expose Sophia like that. No, he didn't, Richard agreed, his voice controlled but laced with fury. Carefully, he settled Sophia in the armchair without waking her and picked up his cell phone. Lauren, activate the emergency protocol. All the documents we prepared yesterday, it's time to use them. He hung up and turned to Zara. Carl forgot I have proof of every irregularity he's committed over the past 5 years. I thought I'd never have to use it, but he chose to do this the hard way. I don't want to be the cause of a corporate war, Zara protested. It's not for you, Richard replied softly. It's for me. For Sophia. For the man I want to be from now on. A nurse entered the room carrying a tray of medication. Ms. Mendez, time for your meds. And Dr. Miller asked me to tell you the results of the latest tests are in. As if summoned, the doctor entered right after, his expression serious. Richard, Zara, we need to talk. It's about the experimental treatment I mentioned. Sophia began to stir in the armchair, waking up. Zara gestured for them to continue the conversation on the room's balcony. The medical center in Boston has agreed to take Zara, the doctor began, but there's a complication. The treatment needs to start as soon as possible, ideally next week. So soon? Zara asked, alarmed. The results show the disease is progressing, faster than anticipated, Dr. Miller explained. If we wait too long, it might be too late. Richard was already on the phone again. Lauren, I need the private jet prepped for a trip to Boston and arrange all necessary documents for... Richard, Zara interrupted, you can't. Not with everything happening with your company. I can and I will, he replied firmly. I've already lost 6 years of my daughter's life. I'm not going to lose her mother too. And what about the board? The legal action? Let them try to stop me. His voice had a defiant tone. I own 43% of the shares. Carl may have convinced some board members, but others have been my allies for years. He won't win this battle. A small sound made them turn back to the room. Sophia was standing there, hugging her teddy bear. Are we going on a trip, Daddy? She asked, the word Daddy still sounding new and precious on her lips. Richard felt his heart melt. Yes, Princess. We're taking your mommy to a special hospital in the United States. Sophia's eyes widened. Like in the stories. Are we going on an airplane? A private jet, Richard smiled, with lots of ice cream and movies. Richard, Zara warned, don't start spoiling her. Let him, Dr. Miller intervened, smiling. I've never seen Richard Blackwood so happy in all my years as his doctor. A ping on his cell phone interrupted the moment. It was a message from Lauren. Urgent. Carl has called an extraordinary general meeting for tonight. He's telling the press you plan to leave the country with a mistress and an illegitimate daughter. Shareholders are panicking at the thought of you abandoning the company. Richard felt his blood boil. It was time to show Carl and the world that the old Richard Blackwood, the one who sacrificed relationships for business, was dead. In his place was a man willing to fight with all his might for what truly mattered. He looked at Sophia, who was excitedly playing with her bear, telling it about the upcoming plane trip. Then at Zara, who watched him with a mixture of concern and something else, something that looked very much like the love they had once shared. Lauren, he typed in response, prepare my suit. I'm going to the meeting, and inform the press. Richard Blackwood has an important statement to make. Blackwood Holdings headquarters buzzed with the nervous energy of a disturbed beehive. Executives whispered in the hallways, secretaries exchanged tense glances, and security guards reinforced every entrance to the imposing building. At the center of the storm, Richard adjusted his tie in front of the executive elevator mirror, mentally preparing for the battle ahead. The shareholders are all in the boardroom, Lauren informed him, walking quickly by his side. Carl arrived half an hour ago with 3 lawyers, and she hesitated. And your former assistant, Clara, is with them. Apparently, Carl found her and convinced her to testify about your erratic behavior in the past. Richard smiled, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He really doesn't know me, does he? Thinks he can corner me with amateurs. Upon entering the boardroom, the chatter ceased instantly. 20 faces turned towards him, some hostile, others apprehensive, a few openly supportive. Carl, seated at the opposite head of the table, wore a look of premature triumph. Glad you could join us, Richard, he said, his tone falsely cordial. "We were just discussing your delicate situation." Richard walked calmly to his seat, placing his briefcase on the table. "Before we begin, I'd like to make an announcement." "You're not in a position to," Carl began, but Richard cut him off. "As CEO and majority shareholder, I am." His voice had a steely edge. "Lauren, distribute the documents, please." His assistant began handing out folders. Carl paled as he opened his. "As you can see," Richard continued, "over the past 24 hours, I've conducted a full audit of the company's operations for the last 5 years. The documents in your hands show, with irrefutable proof, a series of financial irregularities coordinated by our CFO, Carl Jennings." The sound of papers being frantically shuffled filled the room. Carl stood up, his face now red with fury. "This is ridiculous. A desperate attempt to overbilling on contracts," Richard continued, relentless. "Kickbacks disguised as consulting fees. Use of inside information for stock trading. Shall I go on?" But Carl's lawyers whispered urgently among themselves. Clara, the former assistant, looked like she wanted to disappear into her chair. "Shareholders," Richard addressed the group, "I didn't come here to defend myself. I came to offer you a choice. You can remove me from the presidency, of course, but if you do, I'll be forced to hand this evidence over to the relevant authorities. And I assure you, the scandal of a CEO being ousted for taking care of his sick daughter will be nothing compared to the corporate corruption scandal that will follow." One of the older board members cleared his throat. "What exactly are you proposing, Richard? A restructuring?" He opened another. Folder. "I have here a new plan for the Ironwood District project. Instead of demolition and expropriation, we'll undertake a complete revitalization. We'll keep the original residents, modernize the infrastructure, and create a unique model of sustainable development." He projected some images on the boardroom screen. "The initial cost will be higher, yes, but the return in terms of corporate image and social responsibility will be invaluable. I already have 3 major investment funds interested in participating, solely because of the project's innovative nature." The shareholders began to whisper among themselves, clearly impressed by the projected figures. "As for my personal situation," Richard continued, his voice softening, "yes, I've discovered I have a daughter. And yes, her mother is ill and will need treatment in the United States. I intend to accompany them and work remotely during this period. Lauren is perfectly capable of representing me here, and we will implement a system of daily video conferences with the board." He paused, looking each person in the eye. "I've spent 15 years proving my competence to you. I turned a mid-sized construction company into one of the largest developers in the country. Now, I'm asking for a few months to prove I can be a good CEO and a good father at the same time." The silence that followed was broken by the oldest board member. "I think we need to vote. Who is in favor of keeping Richard Blackwood as CEO and approving the new Ironwood District project?" One by one, hands went up. Carl, seeing his conspiracy crumble, stood up abruptly and walked towards the exit. "This isn't over, Richard," he threatened from the doorway. "Yes, it is, Carl. Lauren, please escort Mr. Jennings to security. He is officially relieved of his duties, pending internal investigation." After the dust settled and the shareholders began to leave, Richard checked his phone. There was a message from Zara with a photo. Sophia asleep, hugging her teddy bear, a serene smile on her little face. For the first time in his professional life, Richard Blackwood left the office early, eager to get back to his family. The hospital was strangely quiet when Richard returned, carrying a small pink suitcase he had bought on the way. Inside, new clothes for Sophia, colorful little treasures he had personally selected, trying to imagine what his daughter would like. As he entered the room, he found a scene that made his heart ache. Zara was sitting on the bed with Sophia, in her lap, reading a storybook. The girl asked questions and made comments, her lively voice echoing in the room, while her mother patiently answered, though visibly tired. "Hello, my princesses," he said softly, announcing his presence. "Daddy!" Sophia jumped from her mother's lap, running to hug him. "You took so long. Mommy said you were in an important meeting." "The meeting's over," he replied, lifting her into his arms. "And I brought you a surprise." Sophia's eyes sparkled at the sight of the pink suitcase. Soon she was sitting on the floor, discovering each piece of clothing with exclamations of joy. Zara watched the scene with a complex expression. There was tenderness, but also concern. "How did it go?" she asked when Sophia was distracted with her discoveries. Richard sat on the edge of the bed. "I managed to keep control of the company. And Carl, well, let's just say he won't be bothering us anymore." "I saw the news," Zara said. "Your picture is on every financial website. Billionaire CEO confronts a board to defend newfound family. Some are calling it a publicity stunt." "Let them talk," Richard replied, hesitantly taking her hand. To his surprise, she didn't pull it away. "What matters is that we can proceed with the treatment in Boston. The jet will be ready tomorrow." "So soon?" "Dr. Miller insisted on the urgency, remember?" He hesitated. "There's one more thing. Lauren is arranging the documents to officially register Sophia as my daughter. If you agree, of course." Zara was silent for a moment, watching Sophia play with her new clothes. "Are you sure, Richard? This will change everything. Your personal life will never be private again. Everything has already changed," he replied, "and for the first time in my life, I'm not afraid of this change." Sophia approached, wearing a new blue dress over her hospital pajamas. "Look, Mommy, I look like a princess. The most beautiful princess in the world," Zara smiled, adjusting the bow on the dress. "And is Daddy the king?" Sophia asked innocently, causing a moment of tension between the adults. Zara broke the awkward silence. "Sophia, honey, how about you try on the other clothes? I need to talk to your daddy for a minute." After Sophia returned to exploring the suitcase, Zara turned to Richard. "We need to set some boundaries for Sophia's sake." "I'm listening." "I don't want her to build up unrealistic expectations," Zara began. "I know your intentions are good now, but you still don't trust me," he completed. "Fair enough. It's not just that. Richard, you're a powerful man, used to getting everything you want. But relationships, especially with children, don't work like that. You can't just buy her love with gifts." "I know," he replied humbly. "I'm learning. And I want to learn more, if you'll let me." Just then, Dr. Miller entered the room, carrying a folder of test results. His expression was grave. "Sorry to interrupt, but we need to review the protocol for tomorrow, the trip, the hospital in Boston, the initial procedures." For the next hour, doctor and patient discussed treatment details, while Richard absorbed every piece of information meticulously. Sophia eventually fell asleep on the sofa, still hugging one of her new outfits. "One last thing," Dr. Miller said before leaving. "The doctors in Boston asked for a complete family history. Richard, we'll need your tests too, now that we know you're the father." After the doctor left, a heavy silence fell over the room. Richard was the one to break it. "Zara, I know I don't deserve your trust. I threw that right away 6 years ago. But I promise you, on everything holy, I will never abandon you again. Not for money, not for power, not for anything in this world." Zara studied him for a long time before replying, "You know what the hardest part of raising Sophia alone was? It wasn't the money or the double workload. It was seeing in her eyes, every time a classmate talked about their father, that silent question she was afraid to ask." Tears began to stream down Richard's face. "Forgive me. Please, forgive me." "It's not my forgiveness you need to earn." Zara replied softly, looking at the sleeping Sophia. It's hers, and that, Richard, will take a lot more than expensive gifts. And private jets. I'll spend the rest of my life trying, he promised, one day at a time. The morning of their departure brought an unexpected surprise. When the medical team arrived to prepare Zara for transport, they found a middle-aged woman in the room, hugging her and crying. "How could you not tell me sooner, sis?" the woman said between sobs. "I had to find out on TV." "Amanda," Zara explained, patiently, "it all happened so fast. And you were traveling." Richard, who had stepped out for coffee, stopped at the doorway upon seeing the scene. Amanda, Zara's sister, was the last person he expected to see, especially since their last encounter 6 years ago had ended with her promising to make his life hell if he ever hurt Zara again. Amanda turned upon noticing his presence, her eyes narrowing dangerously. "You, Amanda," he greeted formally. "I didn't know you were coming." "Of course you didn't. Just like you didn't know you had a daughter for all these years, right?" "Amanda," Zara chided, "not in front of Sophia." The girl who was playing with her teddy bear on the sofa looked up at hearing her name. "Aunt Amanda, look at the new dress Daddy got me." Amanda's face softened as she looked at her niece, but her eyes remained hard when she turned back to Richard. "Can we talk outside?" In the hallway, Amanda wasted no time. "What do you really want, Richard? Because if this is just some bored, rich man's whim, I want my family back," he replied simply. "Family?" Amanda laughed humorlessly. "You don't even know what that is. Do you know how many nights I spent comforting my sister when she found out she was pregnant and you were too busy to take her calls? Do you know how hard it was to convince her to accept my help to move to Portugal?" Richard lowered his head. "No, I don't, and I'll spend the rest of my life regretting it. But I'm here now." "For how long?" Amanda challenged. "Until the next multi-million-dollar project comes along, until the novelty of being a father wears off." "Forever," he replied, looking up to meet her gaze. "You may not believe me, Amanda, and you have every right not to. But I'll prove it with actions, not words." "Zara is fragile," Amanda continued, ignoring his response. "Not just physically. She was finally rebuilding her life. And now she has a chance at a cure," Richard interrupted. "A treatment that can give Sophia many more years with her mother." "And what's the price of your generosity?" "Nothing. I don't want anything in return, Amanda. Just the chance to do the right thing, even if it's late." Before Amanda could reply, they heard a cry from the room. They rushed back to find Zara, having another crisis, her breathing difficult and irregular. "Mommy!" Sophia cried, frightened. Richard acted instinctively, scooping Sophia into his arms, while Amanda ran to call the nurse. Dr. Miller arrived seconds later, already administering medication through the IV. "We need to go now," the doctor declared once Zara stabilized. "We can't wait any longer." The next hour was a whirlwind of activity. The medical team prepared Zara for transport, while Lauren arrived with the final documents needed for the trip. "The jet is ready," she informed them, "and I've already contacted the hospital in Boston. The team is waiting." Amanda watched everything with a mixture of concern and resignation. Finally, she approached Richard, who was still holding Sophia. "I'm going with you," she declared in a tone that brooked no argument. Richard nodded. "I've already asked them to prepare space for you on the jet." She seemed surprised. "You knew I'd come?" "I hoped you would," he replied honestly. "Sophia and Zara need you." And he hesitated for a moment. "I need someone to keep me in line, someone who isn't afraid to tell me when I'm messing up." For the first time, a small smile flickered across Amanda's face. "Oh, you can bet I will." At the hospital helipad, as the medical team transferred Zara to the helicopter that would take them to the airport, Sophia held Richard's hand. "Daddy, I'm scared," she confessed in a low voice. Richard knelt to her level. Me too, princess, but you know what? Sometimes we have to be brave even when we're scared. And your mom is the bravest person I know. Braver than you? Much braver. He smiled. She's the one who taught me what true courage is. Amanda, overhearing the conversation, discreetly wiped away a tear. Maybe, just maybe, Richard Blackwood had really changed. The flight to Boston proceeded in relative silence. Zara slept in the jet's medical area, constantly monitored by Dr. Miller and a nurse. Sophia had finally succumbed to exhaustion and slept in Amanda's lap, who occasionally cast appraising glances at Richard. He was sitting near the window, his laptop open, displaying a muted video conference with his legal team. The fallout from Carl's ousting was beginning to surface. Compromising documents, suspicious contracts, a trail of irregularities that threatened to tarnish the entire company. Can't switch off for even a moment, can you? Amanda's voice startled him. Richard closed his laptop. I need to ensure the company remains stable. Zara's treatment costs a fortune, I know, Amanda completed. But money was never really the problem, was it? He faced her, surprised by the almost understanding tone in her voice. The problem, she continued, was always your fear of not being in control, of allowing yourself to be vulnerable. Richard was silent for a moment, watching Sophia sleep. Do you know what my first thought was when I found out about her? What? Total panic. Not because of the money, not the responsibility, but because... He hesitated. Because I realized I'd never have complete control of my life again. That my heart was now permanently outside my body, walking around in the form of a 5-year-old. Little girl. Amanda studied his face for a long moment. Zara felt the same when she found out she was pregnant. But she chose to face that fear. You chose to run from it. I know, Richard admitted. And every minute since I found Sophia again has been a fight against that instinct to flee. But now, he smiled sadly, now the fear of losing them is much greater than the fear of loving them. A soft sound of protest came from the medical area. Zara was waking up, clearly uncomfortable. Dr. Miller quickly adjusted the medication. Richard stood up, but Amanda stopped him. Let me go. You need to make a call. He frowned, confused. What call? To your mother, Amanda replied simply. Or do you think Beatrice Blackwood doesn't deserve to know she has a granddaughter? Richard's blood ran cold. Amidst all the chaos of the past few days, he had completely forgotten his own mother. Beatrice Blackwood, the matriarch who had single-handedly raised 2 children after being widowed, deserved more than finding out about her granddaughter on television. With trembling hands, he picked up the phone and dialed the familiar number. After 3 rings, he heard the voice that always had the power to make him feel like a boy again. Son, you finally called. Mom, his voice faltered. I'm sorry. I should have... Shh, Beatrice interrupted. I already know everything. The papers are full of it. My granddaughter is beautiful. Richard felt tears in his eyes. You're not angry. Angry? Beatrice laughed softly. Richard, since your father passed, all I've wanted was to see you start your own family. I just didn't expect it to take you so long to realize what truly matters in life. She's incredible. Mom, he said, looking at the sleeping Sophia. So smart, so sweet, and yet so strong, just like her mother. Zara, Beatrice's voice softened. I never understood why you let her go. She was perfect for you. I was an idiot. You were young and scared, his mother corrected, just like your father was at first. But he learned, and you're learning, too. A movement caught his attention. Sophia was waking up, rubbing her sleepy eyes. Mom, I have to go. Sophia's waking up and... Bring her to meet me as soon as you can, Beatrice requested. And Richard, I'm proud of you, son, of the man you're becoming. After hanging up, Richard found Sophia looking at him curiously. "Was that Grandma?" she asked. "Yes, it was," he smiled. "She can't wait to meet you." "I have a grandma?" Sophia's eyes sparkled. "Mommy said Grandma Antonia is in heaven." "Yes, you have a Grandma Beatrice who will love you very much," he replied, sitting beside her. "And you know what? She makes the world's best brownies." Sophia's face lit up with a smile, but then turned serious again. "Daddy, is Mommy going to get better soon? I want her to try Grandma's brownies too." Richard swallowed the lump in his throat, pulling his daughter into a hug. "We're going to do everything we can for that, Princess. Everything we can." Massachusetts General Hospital stood imposingly against the gray Boston sky. After a smooth landing and an efficient transfer, Zara was quickly settled into a private suite in the experimental treatment wing. The American medical team, led by Dr. Sarah Thompson, was already waiting for them. "The protocol needs to begin immediately," the doctor explained after examining Zara. "The next 7 days will be crucial." Richard watched through the ICU glass as the team prepared Zara for the first cycle of treatment. Sophia was by his side, her small hand gripping his tightly. "Why is Mommy sleeping again?" she asked, her voice trembling. "It's so she doesn't feel any pain during the treatment, Princess," he explained gently. "Like when you get anesthesia at the dentist, remember?" Amanda approached, carrying a hospital teddy bear. "Sophia, honey, how about we go to the cafeteria? They have chocolate milkshakes." The girl hesitated, looking at her mother through the glass. Richard knelt to her level. "You can go, my love. I promise I won't leave here. If anything happens, Aunt Amanda will bring you right back." After they left, Dr. Miller, who had overseen the entire transfer, approached Richard. "The doctors are optimistic," he said. "The treatment has shown good results in similar cases. But it will be a tough battle. The next few days will be especially complicated. The side effects..." He was interrupted by the sound of his cell phone. Richard saw Lauren's name flashing on the screen. "I need to take this," he said. "Can you stay with her for a moment?" In the hallway, Richard heard the news he feared. Carl had started leaking compromising documents to the press, trying to tarnish the company's reputation. "The stock has fallen 30% since yesterday," Lauren informed him. "Investors are panicking. The board is demanding your immediate return." Richard leaned against the wall, feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders. "How much do we have in cash reserves?" With Carl's latest moves, less than half of what was projected. If this continues, Zara's treatment could be compromised. He completed, a cold feeling in his stomach. "Richard?" Amanda's voice surprised him. She was standing in the hallway, Sophia by her side, a half-finished milkshake in her hand. "Is everything okay?" He tried to smile, but couldn't. Sophia, always sensitive to adult emotions, approached him. "Daddy, are you sad?" Richard hung up the phone and picked up his daughter. "No, Princess, just worried, grown-up stuff." But Amanda wouldn't be so easily fooled. After convincing Sophia to stay with Dr. Miller, she pulled Richard into an empty room. "What's going on?" He hesitated but decided to be honest. "Carl is destroying the company. If this continues, I might not have enough funds for the treatment," Amanda completed, paling. "How long?" "If things continue at this rate, 2, maybe 3 weeks." Amanda began pacing the room. "And if you went back, could you turn things around?" "Probably, but it would have to be now, and..." He looked through the window, where he could see Sophia talking with Dr. Miller. "I can't leave them, not again." "You can't let Zara die either," Amanda said harshly. The word "die" hit Richard like a punch. It was the first time someone had voiced that possibility. "There must be another solution," he muttered, more to himself than to Amanda. Just then, Sophia ran into the room. "Daddy! Daddy! Mommy woke up!" They rushed back to the ICU. Zara was conscious, though clearly weakened by the first cycle of treatment. Her eyes met Richard's through the glass, and he saw something there he hadn't seen in a long time. Trust. "Sophia," he called, making a decision. "Stay with Aunt Amanda for a bit. I need to talk to Mommy." Inside the ICU, protected by sterile masks and gowns, Richard held Zara's hand. "How are you feeling?" "Tired," she replied with a small smile. "But fighting." "Zara, He hesitated. "I need to tell you something." She squeezed his hand, weakly. "It's about the company, isn't it? I saw the news on Amanda's phone. Carl is destroying everything I've built to force me to come back." "Then go," she said simply. Richard blinked, surprised. "What?" "Go? Save your company. Sophia and I aren't going anywhere." She paused, breathing with difficulty. "Besides, I need you to keep that empire intact. Our daughter will inherit it all one day, won't she?" For the first time in days, Richard laughed. A genuine laugh mixed with tears of relief and gratitude. "I'll be back as soon as possible," he promised, "and this time it's a promise I intend to keep." The boardroom of Blackwood Holdings was packed when Richard entered, still wearing the same clothes from the flight from Boston. Deep, dark circles marked his face, but his eyes shone with an iron determination. Carl Jennings was there, surrounded by lawyers, a triumphant smirk on his face. "Finally realized where your place is, Richard." "My place?" Richard walked to the head of the table, his voice dangerously calm. "Let me tell you a story, Carl. It's about a man who spent 15 years building an empire, convinced that success was measured in the height of buildings and numbers in bank accounts." He turned on the projector, showing a photo of Sophia smiling. The murmur in the room ceased instantly. This man discovered just a few days ago that he had a daughter, a little princess who, despite having every reason in the world to hate him, welcomed him with a hug and called him Dad. His voice choked slightly. And he also discovered that the only woman he ever truly loved was sick, desperately needing help. He changed the image to the documents incriminating Carl. So when this man finally understood what truly mattered in life, an envious rat tried to destroy everything he had built. Not for justice, not for principles, but out of pure, simple envy. Carl stood up, red with anger. "This is slander. My lawyers—" "Your lawyers should take a look at this," Richard interrupted, projecting new documents. "Lauren, please distribute the copies." His assistant began handing out folders. Carl's lawyers paled as they saw the contents. "While you review that," Richard continued, "let me tell you what we've uncovered in the last 24 hours. Carl not only embezzled money from the company, he sold confidential information to our competitors. He signed overinflated contracts with shell companies registered in his mistress's name, and most interestingly, he used company money to bribe public officials." The silence in the room was deafening. Carl had sunk into his chair, all his bravado gone. "Board members," Richard addressed the group, "I came here today not to defend myself, but to protect the future of this company, the future that one day will belong to my daughter." And he took out his cell phone and showed a recent message. "And speaking of the future, I'd like to share some news I received just a few minutes ago from Boston. Zara's first treatment cycle has shown promising results. The doctors are optimistic." His eyes filled with unshed tears. "Do you know what my daughter told me before I left? Daddy, do what you have to do, but come back soon. A 5-year-old child showed more wisdom and understanding than many adults in this room." He turned to Carl. "You tried to destroy me using my family as a weapon, but you know what your mistake was. Family isn't weakness, Carl. Family is strength, it's purpose. It's the reason we build empires." The chairman of the board cleared his throat. "Richard, on behalf of the board, I apologize. We were hasty in questioning your leadership." "No," Richard interrupted. "You were right to question. The old Richard Blackwood, obsessed only with profits, deserved to be questioned. But that man no longer exists. He then projected his new plan for the Ironwood district. This will be our new legacy, a project that will not only generate profits, but transform lives. That will show it's possible to grow without destroying, to evolve without excluding. The board members began to flip through the plans with genuine interest. Carl, seeing his imminent defeat, stood up to leave. "Oh, Carl," Richard called out, "don't bother clearing out your office. The FBI is already doing that as we speak." After Carl was escorted out by security, the board voted unanimously for his dismissal and for full support of Richard's new projects. "Lauren," he called as soon as the meeting ended, "get the jet ready. I'm flying back to Boston tonight." "But sir, there are still so many loose ends." Richard smiled, showing a photo of Sophia on his phone. "The only loose end that matters is waiting for me in Boston. The rest can be handled by video conference." At the airport, while waiting for the jet to be prepped, Richard received a message from Amanda with a photo. Sophia was asleep in the armchair next to Zara's bed, who was also sleeping peacefully. The text read, "Doctors just confirmed. Treatment is working better than expected." For the first time in his adult life, Richard Blackwood cried in public. They weren't tears of sadness or anger, like so many he had shed in his lonely office. They were tears of gratitude, of hope, of love. His empire hadn't crumbled. On the contrary, it had transformed into something bigger and more meaningful. Because now it was no longer just a pile of concrete and steel. It was the legacy he would leave for his daughter. A legacy built not just with money and power, but with love, redemption, and second chances. 3 weeks flew by. Autumn painted the trees of Boston with golden and red hues, creating a spectacle Sophia watched with wonder from the hospital window. Her face was pressed against the glass, her breath fogging the cool surface as she eagerly awaited someone special. "Is she here yet?" she asked for the 10th time in 5 minutes. Richard, sitting in the armchair near the window with his laptop, smiled. "Yes, Princess. Grandma Beatrice just texted saying she's in the elevator." Zara's treatment had been a success beyond the most optimistic expectations. After the initial scare, her body responded extraordinarily well to the experimental protocol. Now, still recovering but out of danger, she rested in bed, tenderly watching her daughter's excitement. The room door opened, and Beatrice Blackwood entered carrying a basket that exuded a familiar chocolate aroma. "Grandma!" Sophia ran to hug her. "Did you bring brownies?" "Sophia," Zara gently admonished from the bed, "is that any way to greet your grandmother?" But Beatrice had already knelt, hugging her granddaughter with tears in her eyes. "I did, my love, and much more. I brought all the love I've stored up all these years waiting for you." Richard watched the scene, his heart overflowing. His mother, always so elegant and composed, was completely melted by her granddaughter. In just 3 days since her arrival, she had already transformed the hospital room into something more, welcoming, with colorful cushions and small personal touches. "Zara, dear," Beatrice approached the bed after handing the basket of sweets to Sophia. "How are you feeling today?" "Better every day, Mrs. Blackwood," Zara replied with a genuine smile. "The doctors say we might be able to go home next week." "Home," Richard repeated thoughtfully. "About that, I have a surprise for you." He picked up his tablet and showed some photos. It was a beautiful house with a spacious yard and a play area. "It's 10 minutes from the school we researched for Sophia and 15 minutes from the new Ironwood District project," he explained. "There's enough room for everyone, including a guest room for Grandma when she wants to visit." "Richard," Zara began, but he interrupted her gently. "I'm not assuming anything," he assured her. "It's just an option. A house where our daughter can grow up with space, security, and close to all her family. The rest is up to us." Beatrice, sensing the moment called for privacy, took Sophia by the hand. How about we go to the cafeteria and get some hot chocolate to go with these brownies? After they left, a significant silence hung in the room. Zara was the one to break it. These 3 weeks, you haven't left our side for a single day. And I don't intend to, he replied softly. Even with the whole crisis at the company, with all the restructuring work, I discovered I can manage an empire very well by video conference, he smiled, especially now that Lauren has been promoted to executive vice president. Zara smiled, remembering how the competent assistant had proven to be a brilliant executive. And the Ironwood District project? Construction starts next month. But now, with a difference, we've created a foundation in your name to ensure the original residents have a share in the profits from the new developments. Tears glistened in Zara's eyes. You really have changed. No, he corrected, sitting on the edge of the bed and taking her hand. You and Sophia helped me find who I always should have been. Outside, they heard Sophia's crystal-clear laughter mixed with Beatrice's affectionate voice. The sound made them both smile. She's incredible, isn't she? Zara said. So strong, so resilient. Just like her mother, Richard completed. Zara, I know I don't deserve it, but... She placed a finger on his lips, silencing him. Do you know when I realized you had truly changed? It wasn't when you dropped everything to bring us here. It wasn't even when you faced Carl to save the treatment. When was it? It was when I saw you sitting on the floor of the room, doing a jigsaw puzzle with Sophia at 3 in the morning because she was scared and couldn't sleep. I saw something in your eyes I'd never seen before. Peace. Richard felt his heart quicken. As Zara interlaced her fingers with his, we still have a lot to rebuild, she continued, a lot of trust to regain. But maybe we can do this together, as a family. The door opened and Sophia ran in, her face smudged with chocolate, followed by a smiling Beatrice. Mommy, Daddy, look, Grandma taught me how to make brownies. Richard and Zara looked at each other, their fingers still intertwined, as Sophia carefully climbed onto the bed to show off her culinary creation. Outside, the autumn sun began to set, painting the Boston sky with hues of hope. A new story was just beginning, no longer of skyscrapers and corporate empires, but of a family that discovered the greatest project of all is to build love, forgiveness, and second chances.